don't understand why you have to be so mean.
You're being so unfair.
You're always being so negative. Why can't you just focus on the positive for once?
I was trying to do something nice. Why do you have to be so rude about it?
My heart has always been in the right place.
My heart has always been in the right place.
Hello, and welcome once again to Neurologic. I'm your host, Leo Jones. One of the most pernicious forms of gaslighting that autistics, especially autistic advocates, experience is called good intention gaslighting. This can come in many forms, and often is unintentional or unconscious on the part of the person and/or group with the good intentions. Nevertheless, it has permeated and proliferated our community so much that it seems to happen on a daily basis. If you're not familiar, good intention gaslighting is a form of manipulation where the perpetrator claims their actions are good because their intentions are good, i.e., their heart is in the right place. So if their actions harm you, it's not their fault because they weren't directly trying to hurt you, and the motive for their actions, at least in their mind, was good. It's particularly virulent in the autism community, which differs from the autistic community, where neurotypical parents, relatives, and others unilaterally decide to do certain things and claim they're doing them for the children with autism, but never explore the full consequences beyond what makes them feel good about it. This can take the form of using puzzle pieces as symbols for autism, promoting and donating to neurotypical-led organizations like Autism Speaks, creating intentional communities that segregate autistic persons from the rest of the population, creating new ways to identify autistics to police and other law enforcement personnel without their permission, casually talking about their autistic loved ones using infantilizing and pathologizing language, and even embracing harmful pseudoscience positions such as essential oils can cure autism or vaccines cause autism. Both are not true. For many, in their minds, autism isn't just a disability or a differentiation in neurological functioning. It's an enemy, a terrible violator that has stolen the child they deserved to have in their lives and forced this monstrosity on them instead. But most of them don't say this part out loud, at least not to autistics that speak and respond. Writing this was somewhat difficult for me, as for some, their intentions are truly good, and they think that because others approve and label their actions as such, it verifies their intent. It is hard to accept that you've hurt someone, much easier to think they are trying to harm you when they objectively criticize what you're doing. But that doesn't excuse the fact that the actions themselves are harmful, and you should probably stop. This episode could go on for years discussing good intention gaslighting, but for the purposes of brevity and precision, I'll be focusing on more specific forms and cases that resemble sanctified inspiration porn. Your aunt who casually likes or reposts an Autism Speaks post and gives it very little thought afterward isn't who I'm going after here. Rather, it's those who may indeed have initially good intentions, but ultimately end up standing their ground for their own ego and sense of self-worth. It's not that they're selfish, however likely that may be. It's because they didn't carefully think about what they were doing, and now that they face criticism, they refuse to carefully think about those things. They refuse to do so, digging in against anyone that doesn't reinforce or agree with them. Neurotypical parents of autistics tend to do this a lot, with an almost knee-jerk reaction to any response contrary to their online posts or offline words. Typically, such interactions devolve into phrases and sentences that resemble envy, jealousy, and an adamant effort to exclude. For example, the often used claim, "You're not like my child," or "I wish my child was as functional as you," These are used to push back and make the other party defensive, possibly even feel guilty about things like being able to take a shower independently, or get dressed on their own, or having a job. And therein lies the catch. If this is said to you, it's easy to get angry. But aside from agreeing or not replying at all, what choices do you have? Either you disagree with their assumption that you're some sort of lucky, blessed, inspirational autistic who gets all the smarts and excuses but none of the disability, or you have to disclose your struggles and then have them scrutinized, stigmatized, stereotyped, and judged in some sort of twisted application process that confirms or denies your autism. You can't win. And at that point, there is no longer a discussion. The parent is a thin layer away from saying the quiet part out loud, the part that they're not allowed to say, or that they think they're not allowed to say. That they wish their kid wasn't autistic, and that they blame most of their life on autism. That if their kid wasn't autistic, things wouldn't be so bad. It's not logical, it's not reasonable, but it is emotional, and frankly unacceptable. Now I get it, parenting is difficult, and parents hardly get a break, especially now. Between working 40 hours a week and then having to manage a home the rest of the time, having to manage a child can just skyrocket one's stress level. It makes sense that autism would be used as the scapegoat for problems it at best illuminated or pointed out, rather than confronting the true problems that make parent life hell in this day and age. But at their core, they truly believe their intentions are good, that their hearts are in the right place. Like actor William Shatner. You might be familiar with his body of work, namely his flagship role on Star Trek, and some of you more familiar with the autistic community might even be aware of his positions on autism via Twitter. Shatner, like many other celebrities, attempts to do good things, like raising money for charities, visiting sick kids at a hospital, etc., etc. With Shatner, it was his wholehearted endorsement of Autism Speaks, and repeated staunch defense of said most controversial and noted autism charity organization. You can find his tweets yourself. Searching Shatner and autism would probably turn up some informative results, but I'm not going to read them off here. Shatner feels he is doing something good, something right, playing the game and being charitable, altruistic, benevolent. And when autistic activists told him otherwise, he not only doubled down, he went on the offense. He was hurt. How could you do this to him? He's trying to help children, and not only are you ungrateful, you're hurting him as though he were some sort of cruel villain. You must be the problem, because there's nothing wrong with helping children. What more do you want from him? Why does it feel like whatever he does is not good enough? In all honesty, Shatner most likely is not a malevolent person, but his actions certainly are. His heart is supposedly in the right place, but his head can't understand how he would be causing anyone harm. He doesn't want to hurt people, so naturally he's not hurting people. Faced with the reality of the opposite, that even good-intentioned actions can hurt others, people like Shatner refuse to acknowledge that reality. If he did, how could he atone or fix the mistakes he's made? There's no guide, no step-by-step process, and having to admit such a significant error is frightening. Unfortunately for some, it's easier to live with the delusion than face that reality. And neurotypicals aren't the only ones who believe their actions follow their hearts. Take Carrie Magra, for example. Carrie's had quite a journey, being diagnosed autistic at age 4. Then, in the past 9 years, he's become a professional motivational speaker, written 2 books, become a consultant for movies and television shows, and even blogs for Autism Speaks, among other organizations. He wears the blue puzzle piece proudly. He is looked at as a successful, independent autistic, someone that autistic children can emulate and turn to as a role model. He wants to make life better for autistics like himself, and it's clear through his action that he does think he's making a difference, as it were. I'm not bringing Carrie up to trash him, nor to make him look bad or feel bad. However, despite his intentions, some of what he has said and done is harming our community. See, back in spring and summer of this year, Carrie wrote some blog posts about masks. Literal masks, not masking or camouflaging as some of you might be familiar with. I'm working on that topic for a later episode. No, Carrie wrote about the face masks that people are strongly recommended to wear to prevent the spread of the highly infectious and deadly disease COVID-19. Short disclaimer right now. At this time, if you're against masks and think that COVID is some sort of hoax or no worse than the flu, please stop listening. Thank you, I appreciate it. Anyway, continuing on. Carrie wrote a few blog posts about how difficult it was for autistic children to wear masks, a fact that, on its own, is true. He said wearing a mask is a sensory nightmare. Again, on its own, that is true. It is a true fact. But instead of offering alternatives, like face shields or adaptive face masks that aren't so constrictive, Carrie just requests that people observe social distancing and, quote, be kind through this process, end quote. Which, okay, whatever, not really a solution. And had that been it, I wouldn't have said a word. Carrie isn't technically wrong here. Masks mostly suck to wear. They hurt your ears, they make your mouth and nose hot, they make it hard to hear people or be heard by others, and they're not always the best feeling on one's skin. But he didn't leave it at that. No, in follow-up posts, he points out autistic children who have been restricted or removed from stores and even airplanes because of their inability to wear a mask for significant periods of time. Does he balance this with the fact that his recommendation to socially distance wasn't followed in these circumstances? No, he instead just keeps writing about how it's a sensory issue, and while he makes no hard declaration, he has come out against mask shaming and repeats Autism Speak's new slogan that 2020 should be a year of kindness, and that goes for all the autistic children who cannot deal with the sensory nightmare of a mask. You know what? I fully agree. We shouldn't make an autistic child feel bad for not being able to handle a mask. But leaving it at that, as Carrie has, is harmful. Not just because he offers no solution, no alternative, no help from an autistic perspective to adapt and possibly get used to wearing a mask, but because he's leaving out a significant portion of the autistic community in his snap judgment. Those who have co-occurring medical conditions and are immunocompromised, and there is quite a bit of an overlap. The autism spectrum isn't two-dimensional. It covers more than just behavior and cognitive ability. Autistics with other medical conditions, such as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, epilepsy, gastrointestinal issues, etc., also have their place on the spectrum. Gender fluid and non-conforming, non-binary autistics are also part of the spectrum as well, but again, as I said before, that's a topic for another episode. Carrie's words scream, "Think of the children!" with brief remembrances of his own childhood, but with little to no consideration of the autistics who might be severely affected by unmasked individuals. What about them, Carrie? Shouldn't the year of kindness extend to those who cannot remove their co-occurring medical conditions like a mask? Clearly it means a lot to you, and you have genuine empathy with this topic. Why aren't you giving parents and autistics solutions to the mask issue? Carrie Magro is not a bad person. He's not a bad autistic, and I don't want my words taken as though I was calling him either one of those. But Carrie, masks are extremely important right now, even with a vaccine. And frankly, if the choice is between catching COVID, dying unconscious on a respirator, or having to wear a mask and making others wear one as well, yes, I am definitely going to mask shame people, especially their kids who are also vulnerable to COVID. Again, Carrie isn't bad. Even he has recently come out as skeptical of what has become the latest and most apparent example of good-intentioned gaslighting. Sia. Do you know Sia? Up until this month, I had never heard of them. That's not a criticism, just unfortunate that the first time I'm aware of them, it's because of this. Sia is a singer and apparently a film producer whose visual shtick is a giant bow on top of her head. Again, not a criticism, just a visual assist to make it easier to identify her. And up until a few weeks ago, that's about as much as I would have known. Per an article from Autish, link in the script, quote, Sia is a well-known music artist who has collaborated with Maddie Ziegler in previous music videos, with hits like Titanium and Chandelier. The obscured-faced woman has now branched out to making a film all about an autistic character. End quote. The film in question is called Music, and it does star Maddie Ziegler. It's a film about an autistic girl whose lead is played by a neurotypical. Not great, but nothing we as a community haven't seen before. It's literally news when an autistic actor gets a major role, so I don't think anyone was surprised, just irritated that once again, disabled actors get passed over for roles about them and based upon them. I saw the trailer, which, by the way, is all that's currently out there to view. Remember that because that will come up again soon. The trailer is... oof, how do I put this? It's not terrible, but it's disappointingly nothing new. Despite having Kate Hudson and Leslie Odom Jr., it just felt like another happy, sunshiny, stars and rainbows joy vibe movie that uses disability as an expendable vehicle for a plot. Music, that's the name of the autistic girl character and the name of the movie, just in case you were confused, is depicted poorly, which is saying something for a trailer as well as a fictional character that isn't even real. The headphones are there, music is music's special interest, and she's nothing more than a smile bursting with whimsy and happiness. If this is what Sia thinks autistic women and girls are like, she is massively ignorant and critically uninformed, and doing a serious disservice and offense to them. There is so much more to autistic women and girls than that, and they face monumental discrimination, stigma, and stereotype. And that's when they're pursuing a diagnosis alone. Sia states that after 3 years of research, allegedly, her film is a, quote, love letter to caregivers and to the autism community, end quote, and calls it, quote, Rain Man the Musical, but with girls, end quote. Rain Man the Musical, but with girls? Oh, wow. Did Sia talk to autistic women and girls for an accurate representation of this story? I'm guessing not, since most autistic women would bristle at the notion of such a film. But with only 3 years of research, again, allegedly, led by Autism Speaks, I assume this is the best result you could probably get. So between a non-autistic lead, a shallow trailer, and a description of the film that seems to come from a 90s perspective of autism, there were a lot of valid criticisms addressed to Sia. But Sia was not having it. Here's her tweets in response to those criticisms, which are all excellent examples of good-intentioned gaslighting. Grrr! Fuckity fuck, why don't you watch my film before you judge it? Fury. An autistic actor tweeted at her, writing, quote, several autistic actors, myself included, responded to these tweets. We all said we could have acted on it on short notice. These excuses are just that, excuses. The fact of the matter is, zero effort was made to include anyone who is actually autistic, end quote. Sia's response? Quote, maybe you're just a bad actor, end quote. The rest of these I won't need to do with the quote, end quote, but they're all from Sia. I'm so confused. The character is based completely on my neuroatypical friend. Narrator point, neuroatypical has never been used by the neurodiversity community or anyone who's neurodiverse or neurodivergent. He found it too stressful being nonverbal, and I made this movie with nothing but love for him and his mother. I've never referred to music as disabled. Special abilities is what I've always said, and casting someone at her level of functioning was cruel, not kind, so I made the executive decision that we would do our best to lovingly represent the community. I actually tried working with a beautiful young girl nonverbal on the spectrum, and she found it unpleasant and stressful, so that's why I cast Maddie. The movie is both a love letter to caregivers and to the autism community. I have my own unique view of the community and felt it is underrepresented and compelled to make it. If that makes me a shit, I'm a shit, but my intentions are awesome. I cast 13 neuroatypical people, 3 trans folk, and not as fucking prostitutes or drug addicts, but as doctors, nurses, and singers. Fucking sad, nobody's even seen the dang movie. My heart has always been in the right place. My heart has always been in the right place. C is deeply entrenched in the idea that she's doing something for us, that instead of reacting so objectively to the trailer and casting, that we should be pleased with her good faith offering, that it's a compassionate, considerate piece of art designed to celebrate us. What Sia and many, many other neurotypicals fail to recognize is the dehumanization and pathologization that they purposefully or unintentionally commit through such intentions. The "you should be happy that I'm trying" message, implying that they should be praised for even thinking about us despite the fact that their effort is seriously flawed, perpetuates how we are viewed in society. That if we're not pleased with any morsels tossed our way, we are undeserving, amoral, and ungrateful. We don't truly know if Sia actually did 3 years of research. We don't know who the neuroatypical friend is that she based this movie on. We don't even know who the autistic actors are that she allegedly cast, nor the non-speaking autistic girl she supposedly worked with. But what we do know is that Sia, like so many others, value intentions over actions. That their intentions are what designate their actions as good or bad, not the outcomes or the consequences of those actions. As such, anyone who deigns to state their actions are hurting people automatically come across as making a personal attack, and is treated in kind. And perhaps this highlights a potential obvious difference between autistics and neurotypicals. Responding in a factual manner to constructive, valid criticism that is practical, pragmatic, and not based upon emotional perception, instead of responding emotionally to said criticism. Humans sometimes do things that we think are good because we want to believe we're good, that we're helping, that we're making things better. But that's not how it always works out. You make mistakes. You end up causing problems. You may hurt people. What truly matters is not that every action and intention is pure and harmless. It's learning from your failures, your mistakes, the hurt you caused so you don't do it again. And listening when someone cries out in pain, even when you don't understand why they're reacting that way. It is not enough to think good thoughts, to project nothing but positive vibes. You must be cognizant and aware of the consequences of what you do, and be mature, considerate, and humble enough to accept and learn from your errors, especially when others take the time to address them to you in a constructive, educational manner. I'm Leo Jones, and this has been Neurologic. Neurologic is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit creativecommons.org/licenses/by-nc-nd/4.0 or send the letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, California 94042, USA. Neurologic uses the song Furious Freak, created by Kevin MacLeod, for its intro and outro music. Visit him at inconfitech.com. Furious Freak is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. You can reach Leo Jones and Neurologic by email at neurologicpodcast@gmail.com.